Hello, hello, hello. I have Miss Nicole Ratliff on our Nomad chat, our expat chat, rather. And first of all, I want to thank you for joining me.
Thank you
And
for having me.
you're welcome. And I got to tell you, I have been following you for quite some time now. And I remember seeing you on another Facebook group. And I said, who is this woman? And before I knew it, you were on House Hunters International. And and then from there you went from, I think, Scotland, from
Yes.
there to South Africa, from
Yes.
South Africa now to Portugal.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, man, this woman, she's on a mission. Either she's running from the law or she's on a mission. Okay. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm a single disabled mom to now 12-year-old twins. They just turned 12. And yeah, we've been full-time traveling since 2018. Yeah, we've been to loads of places. Mexico, Colombia, Scotland, yeah, South Africa, and then Portugal.
So how old were they when you started traveling?
Oh, gotta do some math in my head. 2018, that was 4 years ago. So they were 8.
Wow. So how was it trying to travel, or not trying to, but actually traveling with twins at 8 years old?
It actually wasn't too bad. So we did our first trip as a family back in 2016, where we did a Disney cruise. And it was amazing to see them go through the airport, and they were managing everything totally fine. I thought it was going to be a little crazy since my son has autism and loud spaces like bother him, but he loved the airport. He loved reading the airport signage and finding our way to the gate and everything. So it's actually been fine traveling with both of them. We do sort of sometimes we do things on the fly, and that does make things hectic. But my kids are champs, and they've been doing it. It's been
It.
amazing.
I love it. Now, you said you have a disability. What's your disability?
Sure. I have spina bifida. So it's a birth disorder, a neurological disorder. So moms, take your folic acid. That's what, when you don't take folic acid within the first 3 months, that's when spina bifida occurs. That's when there's a likelihood of spina bifida occurring. So I have paralysis in my left leg, lower left leg. So I wear an AFO brace,
Okay.
and I walk with the cane. But yeah, that's my disability.
Okay. Now, like I said before, I saw your episode on House Hunters International, and I was so impressed. I saw you walking with a cane, and there was one property you went to that had stairs,
Yes.
and you did the stairs, and I was like, man, this woman here, she's a badass. Now, when it comes to House Hunters International, that's one of my favorite shows.
Mine too.
How's the filming? Do they really only show you 3 properties and you choose from there? Or do they give you a list?
Yeah, so I can't fully disclose everything, but yeah, we only see 3 properties, and that's it. So I sort of tell them what I'm looking for, and then that's when they try and find something that meets it. So they'll get something like in the extreme that hits everything, all your points, and then then the rest of the properties are like the things that hit a little bit, they hit a little bit, but they're in a great location.
Right.
So there's different like pluses or minuses for the other 2 properties versus the max, the one that hits your max budget.
Right. Now, when you're traveling with your kids, what's your primary objective? Are you looking for a great school system? You're looking for hospitals close by? You're looking for parks, recreation? Or is it just based on your budget?
So when we first started traveling, it was about places that are low cost, because I only get Social Security disability, so it had to be some place where we could make that, where we can stretch our budget in a place like that, and we can still have money to do like excursions and all these activities, restaurants, all of that type of stuff. So Housing for my disability is really expensive because I need what is it, like a roll-in shower. Not that I'm in a wheelchair, but it's easier for me to walk in, to slide into a shower versus a tub. So those properties are normally more expensive. So I know that's going to be at the high end of my budget. So that's the first thing I look for when traveling. And I also ask in expat groups or different traveling groups, what's the best place to, if I'm choosing a country, which place in that country is the best, which is the safest, which one has a higher likelihood of being accepting of English speaking people who are attempting your language without like people like, oh, you can't speak it, I'm not talking to you.
Right.
Where there's a big expat community as well, is something I look for. For the medical piece, that is a big piece because I take monthly medication for my chronic nerve pain. So I need to be able to have access to the medication. And then my son has asthma, so he needs, of course, inhalers. So I try to go to places where I can get my prescription, my son's prescription, without needing to go to a doctor. Because in the States, that's one of a big expense. You have to go to the doctor first
Yes.
and pay the copay to see the doctor and get the prescription, and then go to the pharmacy and wait there. So time is money. And so that all adds up. But abroad, like in Mexico and Colombia, there's an app called Rappi, sort of like Uber Eats. But Rappi, I could order my medication without seeing a doctor and have it delivered to us at a fraction of the cost. So medicine that I would have to pay an arm and a leg for in the US on top of my monthly insurance, you can get for cheap in Mexico and in Colombia. So yeah, medical piece that's right up there with the housing and the safety aspect too.
Okay.
So yeah, and being close to an airport is important too, because if we're in that country and I want to say go to another city in that country or another country that's nearby, I want to have that accessibility and not feel like I'm trapped.
Makes so much sense. Now, going back to healthcare,
Mhm.
how do you compare, I guess, Colombia to Mexico or Mexico to Scotland to South Africa and where you are now, Portugal? How
Yeah.
is it? Did you realize that we're getting ripped off in America?
Yeah. Because I was a federal employee before I started doing this journey, and my my insurance cost every month out of my paycheck was $250 coming out each paycheck. And then on top of that, my copay for seeing a doctor, and then my copay for getting my medication, like that stuff adds up. It's so expensive. So yeah, we are getting ripped off. And then for my medication, period, I couldn't get that from a GP. I had to go see a specialist, a pain doctor, to even get that. So that's more appointments, that's more money. But in Mexico, like you said, and in Colombia, I could just go get that myself. I could go to a pharmacy, show them what I needed. I could say gabapentina and tell them what dosage. They would give it to me without needing a doctor or a prescription or anything. I'm
Right.
just like, our healthcare system is so backwards compared to other countries. And so, yeah, Mexico and Colombia, I could get that. And then attached to most pharmacies in Mexico, there's a doctor, like an urgent care type thing. So one time I fell and I hurt my wrist. I stopped in there to that little clinic and I got a steroid shot right then and there at a fraction of the cost. And he's just like, it shouldn't be a problem, but if you have any problems, just come back and see me. But I think I paid like 50 Mexican pesos just to see the doctor. And then I think I paid $100 for the steroid shot. Like that's pennies, like
Yes.
of what I was paying in the US. Um, and I even in Mexico, I fell and hurt because I fall a lot. The floors and ground is my best friend with my disability. But I fell, no, I didn't fall. I hurt my knee somehow. A doctor came to the house and saw me. He wrote my prescription for what I needed. All I had to do was go on Uber Eats. I'm not Uber Eats, sorry, not Uber Eats, Rappi, say what medication I needed. The Rappi driver came, he gave me my medication, and he just took the script and took it back to the pharmacy. It was very simple. I didn't even need to leave the house. And I think I paid 500 pesos for the doctor visit and the in-home doctor visits and the medication.
Okay.
Now, to go into Scotland, that's different because that's all the NHS. So when I did my schooling there, I had to pay the NHS fee up front. But once we got to Scotland, I had no cost whatsoever for my medication, no cost for seeing a GP, nothing. All the money that I needed to pay was getting a taxi to go to and from the doctor. That was it. Didn't have to do anything. Now, their system is a little antiquated because you would get a paper script and you would have to hand carry it over to the pharmacy. You had to do that for renewals as well for your medication. And when we're so used to the US and I was so used to Mexico and Colombia where I could get it instantly, it was frustrating because for my renewal, they would have to wait till they get the paper script and then you would still have to wait 2 to 3 days to get your medication. It wasn't instant.
Gotcha.
But I mean, it's free. Why should I be complaining when this is free?
Thank you.
I even got, I needed a new AFO because mine broke. I got that for free. All I had to do was take a bus trip to Dundee. Got it free. It was amazing. So I loved dealing with the NHS and I loved all of that because I'm realizing what we're missing with healthcare. Because it was awesome having no cost whatsoever.
Now, how was South Africa?
South Africa, huh? So the health insurance itself, I had to pay for. That was cheap. But there I had to do co-pays again. So I had to pay for insurance and then pay for co-pays. And then my student insurance that I had didn't cover everything. So like I fell and broke my knee outside of the rental property. I told you the floor is my best friend. So I fell and broke my knee. And I needed to get a CT scan, I needed to get an x-ray. The x-ray was covered. The CT scan was not. I think I had to pay 3,000 Rand for that. I'm not sure what the conversion is at, but I think for every 1,000 Rand, it's 100, no, yeah, every 1,000 Rand, it's like 50 to 75 US dollars, depending on the conversion for that day. But still, it's a fraction of what you would pay in the US. But still, it wasn't a cost that I was expecting to pay, you know?
Right.
But I ended up needing surgery. I had no cost for the surgery. I had surgery on my knee and no cost whatsoever to me. I needed crutches. What else? I had to stay in the hospital for a couple of days. All the medication that was tied to that surgery was all covered. Now for our ongoing medication, now that I had to pay for because it wasn't covered by my insurance.
Okay.
So that was a cost I wasn't expecting to pay. So I would spend for my son's medication and my medication about 4,000 Rand each month. And that adds up. So even though South Africa is a low cost country, because of the type of insurance I had, it wasn't covering everything. And that's sort of common with the South African healthcare. When you are on the first year, not everything is covered because it's sort of what is it? It's sort of like the NHS where everyone is coming out, every insurance is coming out of one pot, one medical pot. So they want to make sure that you are not draining the system from your first year from other people. So that's why they make, for the first year, you're responsible for the majority of your costs. But then after that first year, you're covered for everything. So your co-pays may be smaller, but you're still responsible for something. But all my medication, if we had stayed there, would have been covered. All the costs would have been covered. But yeah, that's the medical care there. For Portugal, I haven't done any of the medical care yet, just because I don't know if we're staying here. So I haven't done any medical care here. I mean, I have medical travel insurance to cover us in case we need it, but so far I haven't. And I got, before we left South Africa, I got a 3-month supply of all of our medication,
Right.
just until I figure out what where I want to go and what I want to do.
So you recommend everyone gets travel insurance or medical travel insurance?
Yes, yes. If you're coming from the States, if you're leaving before you leave from the States, I recommend GeoBlue travel insurance.
Okay.
I had the Voyager Essential plan, but it was like $550 for 6 months of coverage for me and my kids. And that covers like repatriation. So if you ever need to be flown home after a medical emergency, it completely covers you. And it will take your family with you. It covered, I think, 75% of medication, and it covered a lot of things, even covered maternity if you need it. So it was a good plan for what we needed it for in Mexico and Colombia. And they have an app. So if you have an emergency, you can look at their list of doctors, and they will call ahead to that doctor, so you don't have any cost before you're seen. So it's a good insurance to have, but you can only buy it before you leave the U.S. That's one of the caveats. Buy it before you leave the U.S. because if you're outside of the country, then you can only get their expat insurance, which is like 10 times more expensive. So
That's good to
do
know.
that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. A lot of people need to know that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what or who inspired you to just look at the US and say, see ya?
Well, so my mom was in the military, and I'm an Army brat. So I was born into the traveling lifestyle. So right after I was born, we moved to Germany. And so we lived in Germany. We were stationed in Japan as well, in Camp Zama, in Okinawa, and then we went to Hawaii. I know it's still the US, but it's a different feel from the
Yes.
mainland. So we went to those 3 places, and in Japan, that was my first time having like a culture experience, because I did an exchange program with a local Japanese family. And I got to stay with them for, I think it was a couple of weeks, actually learn from their culture, see how they do things. It was around Christmas time, but it was amazing. And then I had another Japanese female come and stay with us. So that was my first taste of like life outside of the US and seeing how different it was. And then as I'm growing up in the US and going to the different military bases, and I'm like, I want to go back over there. It's just like, it's so different. But I decided to leave it all after I almost died back in April of 2018. So I was stressing myself out my federal job, and it wasn't even worth it. There's more to life. So I was barely seeing my kids. Like the house that I could afford in the US in North Carolina, it was an hour drive, like in traffic from where we lived. So we would have to get up early. I would drop my kids off at school, drive an hour to work, go work, drive an hour back to go pick them up from after school care, go home. Then it was dinner, homework, bath, bed. Like, where's the family time? And on
Right.
the weekend, I was so tired, like from that week, I just laid in bed most of the time. But that job was like draining me. I was barely eating. I was not taking care of my health or anything. And I have anemia. So it became chronic anemia where I had just gone to the doctor to get a blood test, and he's like, you need to go to the ER like right now. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, go to the ER right now. Your blood levels are seriously bad. He's like, this is why when you stand up, he's like, this is why when you stand up, you like black out. He's like, your blood levels are bad. And we had a different dog at the time, Honey. She would follow me everywhere. Normally she didn't do that, but every time I stood up, she was right there by my side. And it turned out that at, how old was I? 32, I almost had a heart attack because my hemoglobin levels were at a 12. No, not a 12. It was something abnormal, enough where I needed to have 2 blood transfusions because they were super, super low. 12 is healthy. Sorry, 12 is healthy. 12 is where you want to be. So I was way below that. But yeah, the doctor and the ER doctor, they said, yeah, you could have had a heart attack if you hadn't come in. So yeah, I had the blood transfusions. And then while I'm in the hospital getting the blood transfusion, I'm like, yeah, this is not good. Like, I'm a single parent. I'm all my kids have. So we got to figure something out. Not we, me. I had to figure something out for us. So while I was in the hospital bed, I was on Facebook just scrolling through and looking all these travel groups and everything. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to go back and do. I want to live abroad. So once I was healthy enough to go back to work, I gave my 2-week notice. And then after that 2 weeks, they tried to get me to stay. I'm like, nope, I'm not doing it anymore. We took a month and a half to either sell, first figure out what we were going to pack, because we were only taking what would fit in a suitcase and a book bag. That was it. That was all we were taking.
Wait a minute, one suitcase per person?
Yeah, 1 suitcase per person.
Okay. I'm thinking one for the whole family.
No, that would be crazy. So yeah, 1 suitcase per person, and 1 book bag per person. But we ended up taking more than that. We ended up taking 1 suitcase each, and then we have 1 suitcase for school supplies for the kids, and then one bag for hair supplies, because we need hair supplies. Yes. And medication. It was hair supplies and medication with 1 bag. So from whatever we were taking, the other stuff, it was either sell, donate, or trash. So we took a month and a half to do all of those things. We cleaned out our 3-bedroom house that we had, and yeah, most of it we donated to people. We did little yard sales, but I ended up mainly just donating it to everyone. I'm like, I don't need it. Right. Like, this is my cleanse. This is my healthy cleanse. Take it. I remember one grandmother, she was buying clothes for her kids, her grandkids. And she's just like, well, I can afford this one and this one and this one. And she's like, but I really like this one and this one and this one. I'm like, here, just take it all. I don't need it. So, yeah, so that's what we did. But for schooling, my kids are world school, so they do schooling online. And I think that's been the best part of the traveling, because with world schooling, you don't learn just by the program that you're doing online. It's what you can experience in the community as well. So I love that piece.
Now, you mentioned healthcare earlier. Not healthcare, hair care products.
Yes.
Is it hard to find hair care products for African American hair?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes. Mexico was actually very easy. Well, let me take that back. Mexico, when we were near Walmarts, if we were near a Walmart, then it was very easy to find African American hair products. But one time we were in this little town, it didn't have a Walmart, so we just had the little bit of hair products that we had. Colombia, super hard to find it, unless there was an Afro Colombian community nearby. Same thing, Scotland was absolutely terrible. I had to order our products from Amazon. It was actually from a hair supply store down in London. That's how we got our hair products. South Africa, that was easy. That was the easiest place ever to find our hair products. Portugal, it's actually been very easy too, because there's Afro-Portuguese and Afro-Brazilian communities are here. So it's been so easy to find hair products for us here. I like actually stocked up on hair supplies here.
I see your daughter's hair now online, and I can't believe how long it is.
Yes.
I'm like, man,
Yeah.
she got some weave put in. Wait a minute. It's long.
Yeah, it's crazy. I didn't realize how long it was until the lady was straightening it out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like all that hair. But it's actually grown because in South Africa, she was getting her hair braided like once a month. She was going in, getting her hair washed because they had braiding salons down there. So she would get her hair braided and her hair just grew like crazy.
Right.
So, yeah.
Now, see, I've noticed the pictures that you guys took in each country that you lived in. And I tell you, the photos I see now of you guys in Portugal, the entire family is glowing.
Yes.
I'm like,
Yeah.
they look happy. Yeah. And I remember watching you in South Africa, and it seemed like you hated South Africa. Like you had a lot of issues. Yes. Can you talk about some of those issues?
Sure. So I'll go back. So the reason why I wanted to go to South Africa, back in 2013, I did a study abroad trip there with my school. We went to Cape Town. So I was there just with my school, and it's different. It was different going to South Africa then as an adult without kids, because I'm looking at it from a different perspective. Like I can go out and do all this. I can go exploring because I'm not having to worry about the safety of my kids. Right. And because I'm being seen as a tourist, not as someone that lives there. Now, it was completely night and day once I actually started living there. We lived in Hout Bay, and one of the biggest townships in Cape Town is in Hout Bay. I cannot remember the name of it, but it's a very popular one. So if you want to do tours of a township, that's normally where they do the tours, is the one in Hout Bay, because that's considered the safest one. But every street has a security WhatsApp chat group. Before we were added into that group by the real estate agent, I was wondering why people were taking our picture, and it was white people taking our picture. It turned, and they were taking our picture while we were standing in our driveway waiting for an Uber. And it turns out they were putting us as security risk, saying there's a child Bravo male, and Bravo is a racist term for Black. That they had little code names. Charlie was for a white person, but a Bravo was a Black person.
So B is for Black and the C is for Caucasian.
Yes, yeah, okay. But that's what they were sussing in this security group. Then all of a sudden I see my picture in the security group. They were like, Bravo female. And I'm like, I wrote back in there, I'm like, hello, I just moved here. That's me. And they're like, oh, hi, we need to come and meet you. I'm like, no, thank you. Yeah, then it just felt weird. And then on the security, my WhatsApp would blow up every 5 minutes, because every time a Black person would walk past, they're doing all these alerts in this chat, and that's scary to keep them trying to identify. So they're trying to keep it safe from the Black people. And so there's armed security guards out there that were patrolling the streets. And I'm like, you just can't be reporting every such Black person. Right. I'm like, that's risking their life. And then they would come back with, well, they're dangerous. They're going to steal from us and all of this. And there was even, don't leave your trash can out, because they'll take your trash can, go to your fence and climb over your fence to try and break into your house. And I'm like, good grief, you guys live in fear of Black people. Right. So it was so distressing. Everyone lived behind their gates. No, there was no play groups, no play nothing. It was just terrible. I felt like it was a compound, really. Our house was a compound. Um, it was absolutely terrible. My kids, so in Scotland, they had a lot of freedom. They could walk to the store by themselves. They could walk to school by themselves, without there being any risk or anything. They couldn't do that in South Africa. They just stayed on the property. Um, until I had my surgery, then I hired a nanny, and the nanny would take them out 3 times a week to go do something. But besides that, they just stayed on the property because they couldn't do anything. They couldn't even go walk our dog. It was just in our front yard. That was it. So it was very, very isolating. Then going out in the community, it it was so backwards. It felt worse racially than the US. To me, it was just terrible because the racism from the white people there was very open. I remember in a pharmacy, if you remember from the news, um, what was that? There was riots going on in South Africa, because of the previous president was going to jail or something. So there was riots in Cape Town and in all of South Africa. But this Black pharmacy technician was helping this white South African. He was the pharmacy tech was helping him, being kind and everything. But this white guy was just berating this pharmacy tech. He's like, "You work for me," and he's like, "You're only doing this because," I can't remember the guy's name, the old president. But he was just so rude. And if my son was starting to point out, he's just like, "Why is this guy being so rude? Like, there's no sense. If a little boy is pointing this out, something's wrong." I'm like, your behavior there's no sense for that behavior. So what I did was I sat down and I made sure that the white South African knew I was an American and I was speaking up. So he couldn't say I was a Black South African who needs to mind my own business. But I was there as a witness. So if this white guy started causing trouble, and if the police came, I would be there as a witness to say, "No, it's that guy." And the police would believe me over that white South African because I'm an American. But that was me being American was the only leeway I had for protection.
Wow. So you were treated better as an American when people knew you were American. But
yes.
if they assumed you were South African, then you were treated.
Yes. Oh. Yeah. Once they heard me, you could tell the shift in attitude. So once a white South African saw me, they were very rude. And then once I'm like, "Excuse me," and then they heard my accent, then they like total 180. Yeah. But I mean, I even had a racist encounter with my landlord that I was renting from. I left there October 31st. I'm still fighting to get my security deposit back. Was it 42,000 Rand I put down? I'm still fighting to get that back. Still. Yeah. They would nitpick on every single thing. They wanted me to replace their bar stools. I'm like, it's crazy, but I'm still fighting to get my money back. Right. I'm like, it's absolutely insane. But so I did go there for a PhD program. I did end up going to the school that I went to the study abroad program back in 2013. It's a beautiful, beautiful campus. And I'm supposed to be re-enrolling in that PhD program after taking a mental break after last year. But I don't want to do it because I still have so much, I guess, PTSD from what I experienced when I was there. And my
PTSD is real.
Yes. Yeah. It's just, and I have a wonderful therapist, because thank goodness, because I don't know how I would have handled all of that. But even my kids were starting to be depressed. My son, with his autism, he started destroying things again. And he hasn't done that since we lived in the States. So I knew it was time for us to leave. It wasn't a healthy place for us.
Right.
for us. So the only good thing, the only positive from South Africa was that's where we adopted our dog. That's the only positive. But other than that, I don't ever want to go back to South Africa,
And
period.
your dog is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Beautiful. Can you show us your dog?
Oh, yeah, she's right by.
Oh, look at that. Look at that.
Yeah.
Is she very protective of you and the kids?
She's not protective. She just loves us, I think
Okay.
is the way to say it.
Nice.
But no, go
Now,
ahead.
how have your kids benefited from living abroad?
I think they've become more open-minded. Back in the States, they were becoming very Americanized, um, looking at something through one lens, and thinking that's how the world is. And after living abroad, they see that's not how things are. They're going to do things that they're only like other people are only able to read about, or read about in school books or online. Yeah, I think it's benefited them a lot. They have more independence. They're learning about different currencies. So they're getting real life. Sorry, my dog is wanting to be the petter.
Oh, no
They're
worries. No
getting
worries.
real life math skills, language skills. Yeah, because our their nanny back in Medellin, Colombia, only spoke Spanish. Same with our house cleaner service. They only spoke Spanish, so we would have to communicate with them just by what is it, body language and pointing and all that. So they were learning English while we were trying to learn Spanish. So it was really cool. But my kids learned some Spanish words by just doing that sort of thing.
Nice. Now, what do you wish you would have known prior to moving to some of these countries that would have made life a little easier?
Yeah. I wish I knew what I knew about South Africa before I moved there, because
Okay.
I think that would have saved that. And I'm trying to make things positive, like everything is a learning experience. But I wish I'd never gone there. But then on the bad side, then we wouldn't have our dog. So
Right.
gotta try and find the positives. I mean, for every other place, I don't see it as a negative, because we've had so many adventures. But yeah, the only one place I wish we had never gone was South Africa. I wish I had known about South Africa like that beforehand, before we went there.
Because I've been there once and I was treated very well.
Yeah,
So I guess because I'm American and
yeah,
I'm a tourist. So
yeah,
I had no complaints about it.
yeah. I didn't either the first time I went. I'm like, this
Right.
country is amazing. But yeah, it's so different. And I learned some things too from our sitter there was Black too. She Once I started complaining, she's like, yeah, now you see how, she's like, it's 10 times as rough for us um, as Black South Africans. And she told me some stories, and I'm just like, it's like the 60s all over again from the US. It's the things she was telling me baffled me.
And I'm always thinking that it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah. Wow. Now, what's your next move? What country are you
That
looking at?
um I'm really not sure. It's either because the whole purpose of us coming to Portugal in the first place was to go to a country where it was easy for us to get EU citizenship and residency, because I want the kids to go to school somewhere in the EU because it's going to be cheaper in the long run. So
Okay.
I want them to have that possibility. So I'm seeing, after being in Portugal, it's not for us. Like, I'm so stressed out being here. So it's not a good spot for us. It's a little bit better in Porto than it was in Lisbon. But overall, I'm good. I'll come back here to visit. I love Portugal to visit as a tourist, but
Yeah.
not to live.
See, I've got this fantasy about Portugal. And I'm thinking, man, Portugal, I'm reading all these magazines, these books. They're talking about the cost of living. It's affordable. The healthcare is great. And I'm thinking, I got to go to Portugal now.
Yeah. Well, I think so. Yes, the cost of living for some things is lower than in the U.S.
Okay.
But the one piece that is super expensive is the housing market. So if you're wanting to be in the city like Porto or um, Lisbon, the expats and the foreigners that are moving in are
Mhm.
driving up the rental prices.
It's
Um,
everywhere.
and the house that we were initially going to sign for in Lisbon, you're sort of, it's a competing war. So you have to submit a letter to the landlord, and they basically go for the foreigner that's going to give them the most money. It's absolutely insane. And so the average Portuguese person can't even afford to live in those nice houses because the rents are so expensive.
So it's going to the
It's
highest
crazy.
bidder.
Yes, exactly. And then you have to put down 2 to sometimes 6 months security deposit just to secure the house. And in a lot of the expat groups, it's hard to even get that back because the landlord ends up keeping it for no reason.
Right.
So it's crazy. Um, but I've heard that the if you go to these smaller towns or outside of the bigger cities where there's not a lot of expats, then that's when the rents go down. But then you're
Right.
losing access to lots of services. So it's just it's a trade-off. So I am still looking at different places that we can go to so we can get that citizenship and residency. So I'm looking at Malta because Malta has a digital nomad visa. So we could do that. But I was looking at the rental prices there. It's sort of the same thing. The expats and foreigners are driving up the costs. Then there's also Italy. And Italy and France have retirement visas there that are they're similar to um, Portugal.
Okay.
But the housing market outside of Paris and Nice are much cheaper. So like I'm looking at houses there, a huge house, like a 4 bedroom house with 3 baths. I'm just making up a number, but a big house compared to a tiny apartment. The house I'm looking at, it's 950 euros. And it's just like compared to what I would have to pay to get that same property in Portugal, it's just like it doesn't equate. And I've always wanted to live in France, so we're leaning more towards France as the next step.
And that would be a great experience for your kids too.
Yeah.
Great experience. Now, where were you when COVID hit? Were you in South Africa then?
No, so we were in Scotland. We were in
Okay.
Scotland, and that was actually the best place that we could have ever been. The town we were in Scotland, the cases were not as bad there.
Okay.
So I felt safe there. We could walk to and from Aldi's because it was like a 10-15 minute walk from our house. We could go do that. We could get on the bus to go to Morrison's, which is their supermarket. Um, but we felt safe. We felt so safe there. Um, we were watching a friend's dog because she got stuck in Mexico. She went because it was right before it hit right before what was it, spring break.
Mhm.
So we were watching her dog, and she went off to Mexico. So we were watching her dog for about 2 months. So I mean, it was, to me, it wasn't bad. It was a good place to be.
Okay.
We could still get the restaurants we like to eat at because we could do takeaways. But yeah, I felt completely safe there.
Good, good. I was trying to imagine you being shut in South Africa because I remember South Africa everything down.
Yes, yeah. Well, they
So,
did that in Scotland too. We had a complete lockdown. Like you could only go out for 30 minutes a day for exercise. That was it. Um, it was it was terrible. So the kids would go out and walk the dog twice a day. Really, you were only allowed once a day out. That was it. They
uh,
sort of made an exception if you had a pet. and you didn't have a yard, they understood that. And you could, outside of that, you could only go out for essential stuff. So like if you're an essential worker, or if you're going for a doctor's appointment or to the grocery store or the pharmacy or something like that. But other than that, stayed in your house, stayed in your yard. And everyone had to stay within their housing bubble. And the kids they were in public school there. They eventually went back to school. They had like switch days of like when they could go to school. But I the way Scotland organized everything, like I said, I feel completely safe there.
Nice. What I've enjoyed the most is that you've explained how you're on a fixed income and you're still able to make it. I know a lot of people that are retired, that all they get is Social Security. I know people that are on disability, and a lot of them think, okay, I don't make enough money to go anywhere. I'm stuck. So you're living proof that just because your income is fixed does not mean you're stuck.
Yes.
You can still live. You can go to another country and get more out of your money.
Yes, completely. Yes.
So with you going to Mexico and Colombia, I can imagine your money went a long way.
Yes. It so did. But yeah, we would be able to go to like the movies like once or twice a week. It was amazing. We could go out to eat almost every single day, like, and still have money left over. We weren't struggling. Right. We had nice places to live in each place. But yeah, and we could do like little country trips. But yeah, we did fine. We did completely fine.
Now, with you being disabled, have you ever felt like maybe you were a target or people were going to target you because maybe you're walking with a cane and you could easily be a target in some countries?
Yeah. Yes and no. I do feel like sometimes we are a target, just depending on where we are. But no one ever bothers us. I don't know. It's because I'm putting off the RBF that's why people don't bother me. Right. Or some people think, I've been told this a lot. Some people think that my cane has a sword inside because of the way the handle is. So yeah. People just don't mess with me. Like, but I even hear stories about people getting robbed in Colombia, in Medellin specifically. People say don't walk at night. Me and my kids are walking around at night completely fine. No one ever bothered us. And I'm like, I don't see what you guys are talking about. Right. Completely safe. But I think it's also that I don't dress flashy either. I'm basically always in like a t-shirt and jeans. So I'm like, I'm putting off that perception that I don't have money, because I don't. So it's just like, why am I gonna dress all fancy? I'm dressing comfortable the way I'm used to. And I guess people, I don't have my phone out. I don't wear watches or any jewelry. So maybe people just think, well, she doesn't have any money. So,
I always joke around. I say, people look at me in another country and say, damn, he's wearing the same clothes every day. I know he's broke. So I told people, don't flash, don't go anywhere thinking or pretending I'm this big baller, I'm this American. Yeah. No, man, they will take your stuff.
Exactly.
Just keep it simple. I can get dressed and not even match. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I can be wrinkled. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
Because I told a friend of mine, no one looks at you in another country thinking, oh my God, look at those shoes he has on. Oh my God, look at what is he wearing? It doesn't even match. People don't care.
Yeah. The only thing I tell people is don't wear a fanny pack, because that's automatically going to make you a target, because they're going to think tourist.
Say it again. I don't think the people in the back heard you. Say it again.
Don't wear a fanny pack. It's like that's a dead giveaway. Yes. Oh, it's tourist.
The fanny pack.
Yes. Or someone can tell an American right away is if they are wearing socks with their flip-flops. That's a dead giveaway too. There's an American. Like, yep. Yep. And that's how I could tell Americans in Mexico and also in Scotland. I saw some students out and I'm like, you guys must be Americans. And they're like, how can you tell? I'm like, you got socks on with your flip-flops. Dead giveaway. And then I'm like, yeah, don't do that. Like, this Scotland's a safe country, but I'm like, yeah, don't do that anyplace else. I'm like, please don't.
Don't do that. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to finally talk to you and sharing your experiences with us. Okay. Now, do you have a Instagram? Do you have a blog, website? What do you have? Give it to us so everybody can contact you if they have any questions.
Sure. So I'm on on both Facebook and Instagram. It's Mixed Trio Travels. So that's our social handle on both. So you can contact us there.
Okay. And you're open to people reaching out, asking questions?
Sure. Yeah, if you have any questions, especially the medical piece, I try and help people as much as possible because I want them to see that just because you're disabled doesn't mean that you can't travel. Just because you're on a fixed income doesn't mean you can't travel. Especially if you're traveling with kids, everyone should get out there and see the world as much as possible.
Yes.
So I try to help as much as I can.
Can I get a fist bump?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
So thank you for your time. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was nice to finally meet you and talk with you.
Thank you. Same here. So we're going to keep in touch. And I want to talk to you again.
Okay. I'm always here.
All right. Thank you. You have a great day. Okay.
All right. You too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
All righty, man. So we've got another conversation and I'm still learning. I am planning on making that move. I'm planning on becoming an expat and I'm trying to learn everything I can. So hang with me and we can all live together, not live together, but learn together. But hey, if you like what you see, if you like what you hear, please subscribe. Please hit the like button, make comments and share with your friends. And we've got more interviews coming. So thank you for your time and have a great day.